it's taking place as a part of our community career community club, which we have started in the end of the last year. This is a community channel where we meet once a month to discuss everything related to career management and just overall career journeys. As always, please join our Slack and go to Career Club channel to participate and just generally stay informed on what we're doing here at Women Coding Community. And just to give you a little bit of a background to today's session. So myself personally, I have a background in consulting and significant part of my career. I've been working as a consultant, and I must say it was one of the most transformative and impactful experiences of my career. And at Women Coding Community, I'm often asked about consulting. So this wasn't really a brainer. And we came together to help our community to understand how consulting works. And we have organized a very special panel discussion. Breaking barriers, how to enter and excel in consulting. So without further delay, I'm passing on my imaginary microphone to our speakers for a quick introduction.
Sure. Thanks, Julia. I see my picture on the start of the page, so I'll just start. We love a slide in consulting, so thank you for that. My name is Stan. I'm a director in Deloitte. I work in the M&A team and work with clients around kind of acquisitions and mergers and acquisitions, so integration of companies and sometimes divestments and carve-outs as well. So I'll pass on to Monica next.
Thanks, Stan. Lovely to be here and see all of the faces from around the world, it seems. So I'm Monica Burlow. I'm an assistant director in the M&A team at Deloitte as well. Similarly to Stan, I work on very similar problems to help our clients work through complex problems around M&A. I started my career actually in strategy and operations consulting and have shifted to M&A. So looking forward to sharing experiences and answering any questions.
Okay, I'm next. Hi, everyone. I am Lisa. I'm also in the M&A team, but I'm in M&A technology. So we look at mergers and acquisitions as they relate to technology of companies. I also joined in consulting way back in 2019, and then I recently transferred over to the M&A team. I'm also aside from career stuff, I am the lead of the Deloitte STEM community, and I feel strongly about raising awareness for people with disabilities in corporate. And I think that links pretty well to raising awareness for empowering more women to join corporate and to join consulting in technology roles. So that is me. And yeah, I'll hand over to my colleague to introduce herself.
Okay, thanks, Lisa. So hi, everyone. I'm Shonal. So I'm also a director in our M&A practice at Deloitte and sit in the same team as Stan and Monica when it comes to integrations and separations. So I've spent the last 20 or so years predominantly in the M&A space, working both pre-deal and post-deal, everything from integration or separation strategy to blueprinting to the setup of and management of integration and separation program offices, and specifically development of project plans that then support the delivery of synergies from a transaction, so ultimately delivering value out of integrations and separations. My background is in technology as well, so I previously have worked for Accenture in large-scale complex technology strategy and transformation programs. Now specifically, I focus on cross-border M&A engagements, particularly establishing the Integration and Separation Management Office and also working with the C-suite or chief operating officers, integration directors, separation directors, CEOs, etc. So kind of really working on the strategy side of integrations and separations. So great to be here.
Thank you so much for your introductions. Truly inspirational. Great. So with that, just moving on to just explaining how we're going to navigate today. So we really wanted to ensure that we cover and we take a well-rounded approach to consulting journey. So we're going to start with unpacking some of the realities of breaking into consulting. Then we discuss how to thrive in consulting and suggest some of the actionable strategies for you guys. And we will close with reflecting on how we can redefine the future and inspire women not only to succeed personally, but also drive broader change and fostering more inclusive consulting landscape. So with that, we're moving on to our first section. So when it comes to breaking in to consulting, so many women and those in tech sometimes don't really see consulting potentially as an option for them, either because they don't have traditional consulting background, or they lack networks, or they believe certain myths, let's say, about the industry. So my first question is to our panel. So what inspired you to enter consulting, and what was your journey like? Maybe there were some systemic or personal challenges, if any, that you have faced.
I'm happy to take this first one. So I think when I was at university, probably like many of you on the call, or maybe many out there, I didn't even know what consulting was. I sort of went into uni. I was studying engineering at the time, and very much came from high school thinking that there were only very traditional jobs that were available to go into. So I picked engineering. I figured I really, really loved problem solving. And I think I was with a friend at the time, and we went to a career panel, something sort of similar to this. And someone was from, I think it was PwC, that spoke around what consulting was, and that it involved working in teams, problem solving, and working with really amazing clients, whether it's, government or private sector, to help them solve problems. And I thought at the time, wow, this is so cool. This sounds like something I would really enjoy. Sounds like something different, and I really want to explore more. So that kind of triggered a change in degree at the time, actually, because I was like, oh, I don't actually really know anything about business, even though you probably don't have to enter consulting. I think if I had stuck with engineering, it would have been okay. But that kind of triggered a whole change, I guess, of thought, and led me to enter consulting. So looking back at that, I just have a fond memory of this one friend that I went to this event with, because I feel like that sort of opened up a whole new world that I had never really thought about before. And here I am kind of 7-8 years later. So that's what it was like for me. I might pass to Stan for the second question, because I know you might have some interesting insights on the challenges you might have faced.
Thanks, Mark. I was just thinking a little bit around what you just said. There's that one meeting or that one event that you went to, and it just, your whole life kind of turns around. For me, it was something similar. So again, at university, I just didn't know exactly what direction I wanted to go into. And sometimes it could feel a little bit like a downside, or for your own kind of personal, someone who wants to achieve a lot in life, or someone who's kind of used to kind of going through the exams, getting the grades, etc. And then suddenly you face that choice, like, so what do you want to do with your life? And you're lucky enough that you find a person who takes you to the right meeting or takes you to the right event, or you could do a scattergun approach and just send a lot of CVs and see what comes out, and then meet people, even in the interview, and find somebody who's actually quite inspiring, and find somebody who you want to work with. And that was my way into consulting. I actually met someone who had just started up their little consultancy firm, and they were super engaging, very involved. It was like a very startup vibe. And kind of coming out of uni, for me, the fact that I was being offered to dip my toes in every side of the business, from kind of dealing with clients, analyzing data, learning all sorts of different approaches to kind of helping a client and so on. So you get a lot of exposure going into a small consultancy, which was my way into the industry overall. So for me, when you said the PwC and the big names, that's not always the entryway. You can start from like a little consulting firm that's quite niche, and then build from there. So I moved on to Grant Thornton next, and then to all the way to Deloitte. So as you go through the firms, and the deals get bigger and more complicated, but it doesn't have to be, you know, always the same route. Although there's obviously a lot more structure in the bigger firms and so on. There's a lot more visibility and big websites and so on. But it really depends on how you feel about going into consulting. And there's so many opportunities out there. I feel in terms of challenges for me, it was the breadth of what you could do, especially if you go into a smaller firm. And sometimes you could feel like, oh wow, so there's an HR aspect, there is a finance aspect of this transformation, there is a tech aspect, and you're kind of sitting in the middle with, you know, your little business degree, thinking like, oh great, I just finished my business degree, I should be able to know all this stuff. But the great thing is that even though there's a bit of an imposter syndrome, you could just, you know, coming into the industry, nobody's expecting you to know everything. And it tends to be a lot of other people with imposter syndrome sometimes that are also working side by side, and they rely on each other to actually solve a problem together, which what makes the job fun. So I kind of felt, from a personal perspective, kind of getting over the fact that you're not supposed to know everything, but what you're supposed to do is to ask the question and be open and be collaborative, which I found, like, as you move through the different consultancy kind of models, is always valid, small or big or medium. It's like the curiosity, the questions, and the honesty is always appreciated.
No, thank you so much, Stan. I think what you said about feeling overwhelmed definitely resonates with my experience, because I definitely remember feeling that on numerous occasions. And I think with that, it's quite important to keep an open mind when it comes to consulting, because I've heard sometimes people being too sort of fixated on like one thing they want to do in consulting. And that's usually what sort of, you know, not like closes some of the doors, but really keeps their options, you know, sort of smaller. So I think, you know, it's important to keep in mind that, you know, if you sort of are, you know, maybe in the beginning of your career or in general, sort of your way of thinking about career is to try a lot of cool, new, different things, then consulting is definitely that space. Because, you know, with every new project, with every new initiative, it's pretty much like starting a new job, right? Depending on the length of the project that you're on. So it's super exciting, but then at the same time, sometimes it can, you know, bring some other emotions for sure. But it's just about knowing that, right? So
yeah, being aware, being
exactly. All right.
To other things.
Yeah, excellent. Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much both for your insights. I'm sure everyone found it extremely helpful. So I'm going to move on to the next question from this section. And this is just to address a little bit more of our technical background audience. So my question to the panel is, so what specific advantages do women with technical backgrounds actually can bring to consulting, and how can they leverage these strengths?
Hi, everyone. I'll take this one. I think, for me, in my opinion, just by virtue of the fact that you are technical or you have a technical background, that kind of already puts you in a very unique position. And you already have a competitive advantage, in my opinion. Most of the people I work with in consulting are not technical. And it really helps to have that person in a team that is technical and that understands the intricacies of the product or the platform or the tool we're trying to implement or we're trying to integrate, etc. So I think if you're a technical person, it's very likely that you already have very good problem-solving skills. I mean, if you're a coder and you need to code a solution, that in and of itself is you solving a problem, which is what we do in consulting. So if you are able to scale that to like business problems, I think that puts you in a very unique position. The other thing that you're probably already very good at is your attention to detail. So again, if you are a coder or you're a technical person, tester, Q&A, whatever your area is, you probably are very good at paying attention to small things, trying to understand small issues that might occur and things. And yeah, I just think that that attention to detail is a skill that a lot of people in consulting often miss. So we tend to zoom out a lot and we look at the big picture. And again, it's critical to have that person in the team that goes, hey, but what about this risk? Or like, what about X, Y, and Z? And you would know those things because you are technical. So that's a very unique advantage that you have. And then I think the third thing, so we said problem solving skills, your attention to detail, and then just the fact that you are technical in and of itself will give you that competitive advantage, as I said. So you put yourself in a very strategic position where you are able to play in the intersection between technology and business. And that is where the true value comes in, is when a person understands business problems and understands how to solve it using their technical expertise, which is what a lot of people do not have in consulting. So yeah, I think instead of worrying about how your technical expertise applies to consulting, I think you should use it to your advantage, because it truly is your advantage. Yeah, so I think that's what I have to say on that.
Absolutely. I'd echo everything that you've just said there as well. It's absolutely an advantage. I mean, just being able to take your technical skill set and actually being able to look at how technology supports the business, you can very quickly gain an understanding of how the business operates. I mean, I go across all functions now, similar to Stan and Monica in terms of integration and separations. But ultimately, I still use my kind of tech background to quickly understand the business and how it operates, because again, technology underpins all of the kind of key areas across the business. I definitely say capitalize on what your tech background brings. So similar to what Liza said, you've got an immediate advantage of being able to look at tech-focused businesses, for example. So it's not just about tech in the back office, like maybe it was a number of years ago when I was first starting. All tech was all back office. It was, let's just look at how technology works in back office. But now it's actually technology is fundamental to the product and the service offering. So actually that gives you an immediate advantage of being able to look at tech-focused businesses. So I've spent quite a bit of time in pre-deal, for example, on software diligence, diligencing software businesses and looking at the tools that businesses sell, like research platforms or research and development software platforms, product propositions that they have. And that's actually something really powerful. So that's how, in terms of being able to leverage your strengths, that's an immediate strength and an advantage to be able to capitalize on pretty quickly.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I'm sure that our community found this particularly helpful. And I think overall, when it comes to, different type of skills, not even technical, what I always like to say that, it's all about diverse teams, right? And when the big team is built for the project, we need different type of people. We need people from diverse backgrounds who have different ways of thinking, right? So zoom in, zoom out type of situation, technical skills, more of a business translation, right? So there's place for everyone. So I think it's just important to keep that in mind and just, understand and recognize that your skills, they have place and they are special in itself. So when you talk to people, when you position yourself as a professional, it's just important to bring this up. And then I think sort of this can definitely help and maybe address some of the insecurities, so to speak, which may be there to begin with.
Yeah, and I think the industry, just to add to that, Julie, I think the industry is moving towards that more. I mean, that diversity of opinion, that diversity of perspective, that recognition that actually it's not about it's consulting skill sets are not just about one type of kind of fit the mold. It's you've got to have those different perspectives to be able to solve problems in different ways, and that goes across industry, across kind of disciplines. And actually that's something that I think a lot of like consulting departments and organizations are really kind of appreciating now, to bring that difference of perspective.
No, absolutely. And just to quickly sum up our breaking in session, and all the brilliant answers that we got today. So I think when it just comes to consulting, right? So it's important to keep an open mind. So if you are exploring this area, you definitely need to be ready for a challenge and sort of understand that you might be working on all sorts of different things, and you will go and learn all sorts of different new concepts. So I think, like Monica was saying, that, attending sort of open days and have a view of which organizations are out there when it comes to consulting is quite important. And then again, just to reiterate on the technical skill side of things, it is your advantage. And I really liked what Lisa said about, scaling those tech skills and just to actual business problems. So that's something that I think is extremely valuable. And I work myself in product, and I just see how engineers do that on a daily basis. And that's, that is gold. And that's something that you should definitely underestimate when it comes to your skill set. All right. So that was with our first section, and now I wanted to move on to next step of our discussion. So thriving and not just surviving in consulting. So entering consulting obviously is just the first step, right? And excelling requires navigating high pressure environment, advocating for yourself, and overcoming all sorts of biases that come with it. So, dear panelists, my question is then, from your experience, so what makes a truly exceptional consultant? So what habits, skills, mindsets separate the good from the great?
I'm gonna start maybe, but please, ladies, jump in here, because obviously everyone has a perspective, but consulting is a people business. When you look under the skin of everything, we work with clients. Clients hire consultants because obviously there's a skill and everything else, but also imagine having to work with somebody for 6 months under high pressure environment. It's a very kind of personal choice, almost. So that personal skill, being able to be yourself, to come in as a full person rather than just the technology expert or an expert in a field, taking things not as seriously sometimes, even though the situation could be quite highly stressed, very highly stressful and so on. Just finding time to look at the human side of a problem, look at the human side of, the timeline for the project, etc., or, emerge from the technicalities of a project and take a step back. I find this kind of ability to come be authentic is number one for me to being an exceptional consultant. And also looking internally within consulting firms, internal networks are very important as well. So as we said, companies are getting more and more complex. Therefore, the solutions to their problems require people from different backgrounds, different skill sets, different abilities, etc. So being able to find within a big consultancy like ours, like the right person to come and help out, to come and have a conversation with your client, and or help you think through a problem in a different way. Again, that's kind of your ability to kind of make that internal networking work for you. So even though sometimes people think, oh, consulting is like super hardcore, where you have to work whatever 15 hours a day and so on, but don't skimp on the drinks, right? Don't skimp on the informal chats in the coffee area, informal, drinks with the team, because that's how you build that network that then works in your favor going forward to be an exceptional consultant overall. So for me, the kind of human side of things is what could kind of help you stand out for sure. And then on top of it, as a bit of a baseline, is kind of striving to do your personal best. Like, it's not always healthy to compare yourselves to others, but if at the end of the day you're happy with where you've gotten things to, your curiosity has been satisfied, your drive to find a solution, or at least take the most steps that you can in the day to find a solution, is satisfied, and you can, close your machine with a peaceful mind that you're thinking, okay, I've done all I can today, so let's see what tomorrow brings. I think that kind of mindset is very helpful in kind of making you thrive rather than just go through the motions of the day to day. I don't know, Shona, Monica, Lisa, what you think from your perspective.
Yeah, I think the idea of humanizing consulting, that really resonates with me. It's funny that this section's called Thriving, not just surviving. Sometimes I feel like all of us feel like we're just surviving and not thriving, and that's okay. And some of our clients feel like that too. And I think just remembering that everyone is human, the people that we work alongside, not only within our organization, but also our client, everyone is a human. And remembering that, I think, really takes you far, and remembering to build those relationships, as Stan was saying, and taking that coffee catch up and building on that. I think that really resonates with me. I think probably one thing that motivates me, or something that I think I've always sort of had, is curiosity. So whether it's being curious about a problem with a client, or curious about someone's background and how they got to where they are now, or whatever it is, I think that's something that really drives me and has helped me through consulting. I think having that curiosity with client problems really drives something exciting. And I think everyone has their little niches and what interests them and what they're curious about. But I think that's something that has always kind of helped me. I think in terms of skills, it sounds really cliche, but being organized is a game changer. I've not always been organized, and I think it's something I've really developed and gotten better at through consulting, because some of our projects are just crazy, and you have to be on top of a lot of different actions and meetings or whatever it is. I think being organized is something that can really be a game changer through this industry.
And I think someone from a tech background, whether it's a consulting project or you're on a development timeline, like having a timetable and managing your stakeholders around a goal is for sure like one of the bedrocks of the consulting industry, just because that's literally our day-to-day. You open you open your laptop and the first thing you see is like, okay, so what do we have next for the day? And then the rest of the week follows.
No, absolutely. Thank you so much. And I hope you don't mind if I just add one point from myself, just as I feel like I'm back to my consulting years as I speak now here with you. And just going back to the point when we said, when we feel overwhelmed and there's so much to do, right, in consulting, I think one of the things that I had to learn, and maybe hard way, is prioritization. Because I think, when I just started in consulting, I really wanted to try to do everything, and I just, at some point, I've really struggled, pretty much with the potential, of, failing even in some things. And then, learning prioritizing and choosing the most important things, I think was really important. And it's something I definitely would advise everyone to keep in mind when it comes to skills and sort of organizational and efficiency type of mindsets, for sure. And Stan, you also mentioned maintaining and building internal network, and you mentioned like having coffees and obviously keeping in touch. But I was wondering, could you maybe suggest some particular actionable steps for our audience? Because I do get questions quite a bit about this as well. So how do you actually, build and maintain your network? Because I remember when I joined as well, that was, not the most intuitive thing to do. And it really felt out of comfort zone very, very often. So how did you sort of went about it, and some sort of tips and tricks on that?
Yeah, I mean, it's, I guess, two things. One is the people that you're close to on a day-to-day basis. So within your own team, Like sometimes you spend time on a project with just 2 or 3 people, and then you spend months and months with them. But then like going out with just your immediate team, so someone who's sat on the desk. So simple things like turning up to the office might definitely help. And, you know, try not to do the headphones thing all the time, if that makes sense. So it might be a random conversation about a French bakery, which happened to me last week, a French bakery next to me. I mean, that was a perfect in, like, give me a French bakery conversation. Go and say, where is it? Tell me so I can go and try it out. So simple things like maybe turning up to the office and spending maybe the morning without the headphones, and then the afternoon focus on the deliverables. Then secondly, it's more with external people. So someone that you worked with before, but you haven't had a chance to catch up. And to be frank, sometimes it just comes down to being organized, which kind of plays back to Monica's point earlier. If you add a little bit of time in your calendar, okay, on Friday afternoons, I have one person to reach out to, and who would it be today? And your LinkedIn bingo, and you say, oh, it's this person from that I love to go hiking from uni. I wonder what they're doing now, or something like that. Or someone's just posted something on LinkedIn, and you're like, oh wow, that's great. Let's just say hi. So it's like practicing the muscle first. It doesn't have to be, because there's no expectation, right? So it's not like you're doing sales calls or anything else like that, but practicing the muscle to just remind yourself on a given day at a given time. We played the LinkedIn bingo, and then someone gets lucky and they get a call from you.
But that's literally how it works, yeah. Isn't it? You just never know where it's sort of gonna, bounce back from.
Yeah. And then there's those people that you kind of, over the years, you get close to people like mentors, like coaches, someone who's helped you throughout your career or has been invested in your career or in you as a person. I think those relationships kind of develop over time. That's not LinkedIn bingo. That's that's a relationship that you nurture throughout your journey as a person, to be honest. So that requires taking care of as well. It's not something. I personally have had people who have really helped me look at life from different perspective. I like to keep in touch with them because they just give me that, extra boost emotionally and just different perspective. So, it doesn't have to be regimented or structured, but every time you have a certain thought in your mind or a certain feeling that basically makes you think of somebody, I'd say don't ignore it and say, oh, I will do it tomorrow. Just do a little text message like, oh, I thought of you today. What's going on? Yes. It doesn't have to be anything special or anything more than that. So that's my tips and tricks.
No, thank you. Thank you so much. That's super helpful. Thank you. Okay, so now when we are closer to being exceptional consultants, let's move on to the next question. So in the first part, we spoke about how technical skills actually enable us, and if anything, gives us more opportunity to join consulting, right? And in this section, I wanted to discuss, so once we're in, so how can we actually capitalize on our technical skills and stand out in a consulting projects? And also I wanted to ask a panel, so what are some of the essential consulting skills that someone with a technical background should work on developing and maintaining?
Great. Thanks, Julie. I'm happy to start with this one. I think it's quite key to, and we've spoke about it a bit before, but really showcase your expertise. So not shying away from demonstrating how technically proficient you are, actively participating on those discussions, offering solutions based on your technical understanding. I think that's really, really quite key. And then volunteering also to on those tasks that actually utilize your skills. I think also it's important, if we think about the ability from a technical perspective on being able to analyze data, identify trends, presenting that back, taking kind of evidence-based insights to either the team you're working with or to clients, And that really adds that kind of significant value, because what you find is that being able to assimilate that amount of data, being able to analyze it is quite an important skill. I think also identifying opportunities to streamline processes as well, where technical kind of solutions can actually improve or help with problem solving or in certain situations. I think that is something to also think about, how you can use that technical skill to help with that. I think there's also beyond technical, so things like we've already spoken about problem solving, that's really quite key. Communication is really quite key as well. So being able to articulate your ideas clearly, consistently, both verbally and in writing, is quite important as well. So those type of, it might just seem like core consulting skills, but there's also the kind of technical overlay where you can really kind of hone in on that. And then bits we've spoken about also around relationship building as well, really quite key, and goes to Stan's point around being able to build that network around you. It's having that kind of trusted advisor type of conversation, so people can come to you and say, well, look, I'm having this problem. Because often in consulting, what I find is that we're supporting people at times which they're not used to, especially in M&A. So predominantly, the majority of the integration and separation directors we work with haven't been through a situation like a merger and acquisition before, or a separation carve out. They haven't been through that before, and we're there to kind of help them through. So being able to kind of build that relationship in a time of which is really high stress for an organization predominantly is really quite key. So using that relationship building skill is really important.
Yeah, I think just to add on that, I think you've called out everything that I wanted to say. I think two more things that to me is very important in my colleagues and the people I've worked with, who I look up to and I see as a role model. They always have these two skills, and the one is, I think it's really important as well, if you are technical especially, but it's to take everyone on the journey with you. And that kind of relates back to communication. So if you're a good communicator, if you are able to relay what you're trying to do well, and if you are able to relay problems and solutions well, that is critical in consulting. And I think a lot of technical people I've worked with have a hard time of talking to people who are not technical and helping them understand. So a lot of what you're saying is very hard to understand if a person isn't technical. So if you can learn to really take them on that journey, I think that will prove to be very beneficial. And then the other thing, I had a junior staff the other day ask me as well, like, what do they need to do well? And I say, just be proactive. Honestly, like, that's one of the most important characteristics I think to have in consulting, or any job probably really, is to be proactive. Like, lean in, tell people if you don't understand, if you have a question, tell people, hey, I have time available, how can I help you today with something that you're doing? Hey, I came across this thing I don't understand, can you explain it to me? Just to be proactive is a very useful skill to have in consulting. So yeah, I just wanted to add those two things. So I think they're very critical.
No, I definitely agree. Being proactive, well, like really any job, is quite important, because that's essentially when the opportunities and different type of problems to solve are gonna come in. And I think, as we talk, and I guess everyone knows consulting is quite fast-paced, right? Environment, sometimes it's long hours, or oftentimes we get demanding clients, all sorts of stuff. So I guess my question to our panel, just to follow up on this section, is, so how do you maintain confidence and composure when it comes to such a high pressure situations, tight deadlines, or some sudden tasks that come in late minute? So what sort of keeps you sort of straight in that environment?
I'm happy to first stab. So that's a really good question. I mean, you're absolutely right. It's high pressured at times. It's a lot going on. It's a lot of multitasking and actually in a post-COVID world where we're getting back into the office now, but actually still majority of our kind of conversations and meetings happen in calls. So there's still all of that, a lot of calls going in and kind of having to be able to multitask at times. So there's a lot going on. I think one of the things to bear in mind, and this goes back to some of the points we discussed earlier around just being really organized and being able to go, well, how do I prioritize this? How do I kind of use the team around me to help? How do I use others? And how do I kind of efficiently make sure that the time that I'm spending is on the time that I need to spend on versus other tasks that are just kind of coming in? And I think that's the balance to really strike. And obviously in like M&A, it's like every day is a different day. You can come in with one plan, and then by the end of the day, you've done something completely different and not even done what you were supposed to do in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just about kind of working out, well, okay, well, what does that mean? How do I kind of rebalance that and do something different? And actually, I find having that kind of open conversation, even with the team, because if we're kind of going through it together, you kind of have a conversation with the team and go, well, here's everything that's on our list at the moment. How do we kind of segment that? How do we divide and conquer, or what do we need to prioritize, and what do we need to just push back on in some cases? And it's not a bad thing to push back on something, because actually at a time you've got to push back on something, because otherwise you won't do what you need to do or do a good job on it. And I think that's a balance to kind of strike in those situations.
No, absolutely. Thank you so much. Any other experiences when it comes to, I guess, staying resilient in these times?
And I feel the projects can have ups and downs, so it's not all the time, having to juggle so hard. So I kind of like to feel that, okay, this period is now the up, and then there'll probably be a down, and then there'll be up again. So you kind of get a breather as well in between. But again, as Shona was saying, saying no to things is not a bad thing, especially when it comes from a place of experience, where sometimes people are trying to do a lot of stuff in a very short period of time. And we know from doing this over and over again with other clients that this particular thing can wait. So this is where kind of experience starts kicking in, especially where you're looking after a team and you're making sure that, people don't spend the night in the corner trying to get a spreadsheet ready for next morning for no good reason, right? So I kind of like to take a perspective that, it's a period, and it could be a live thing as well with like when I was looking after a young kid, it was like, it's all a phase. Don't worry. It's gonna be done in a minute, and then you'll be back to business as usual, as we like to call it. So trying to stay positive. Sometimes we all kind of go through a bit of a tough time, but trying to stay positive, being as organized as you can get, leaning on the team around you, and knowing that it's not just you going through it, it's probably a few other people feeling the pressure, not just on the consulting side, but clients are also kind of trying to get over deadlines and so on. So not feeling isolated definitely helps in those situations.
I think just to add on to that as well, from a sort of outside of work perspective, is learning how to, as I like to say, fill up your own cup. So finding the things that give you joy outside of work really can help get you through a stressful situation. And I know personally for me that it always hasn't been easy, because sometimes it is just easy to go, 150% just focused on work. Work is life. You're in the office 24/7, you're not sleeping, you're not eating, you're not exercising. And, sometimes when you look after yourself, you feel guilt, taking time off to do the things for yourself. But I think something I really learned is that that's really important, to make sure that, you're looking after yourself and doing things that give you joy, that really helps you get through any stressful situation.
No, thank you, Monica, so much. I think, bringing up the work-life balance in consulting, I think it's quite important, and we definitely should not forget about it. And to be honest, I feel like sometimes taking a step back from, let's say, the problem you're trying to solve and, just do a quick meditation or go for a quick run. If anything, it will help, because you can just then go back and look with a fresh pair of eyes, and you will be so much more productive. And I know that when you sort of get sucked in all of this, in all this, kind of fast-paced environment, it's really hard to kind of, float out from it. But it is quite important for sure. Just like in any job, having some, me time, you time it's quite important. So thank you so much on your answers for exploring how to thrive in consulting. And I think just to quickly sum up, we just were discussing, consulting is indeed a people's business, right? So staying human, I think it's just something for us to keep in mind. So consulting definitely requires some resilience, open-mindedness, being proactive, good communication skills. And, when it comes to technical skills, it's just definitely not to be shy, with showcasing your experience and, demonstrating that, you're a great SME in particular field, and there's so much you can do. And it's about looking for those opportunities where you can demonstrate your talent. So I think, of course, it's easier said than done, for sure. But I think at least acknowledging and being aware of this is definitely a good first step. All right. So now let's move on to discussing a little bit the future, right? So to close on today's discussion, what I wanted to do is to spend a little bit time on reflecting on a grander scale. So consulting firms and the industry as a whole, still lacks some diversity, and women who succeed, they definitely should uplift others, right? Create inclusive spaces and shape the future of industry. So let's shift our focus from individual success and try and think, so what we can actually do to encourage more women to lead and challenge the outdated norms when it comes to consulting industry. So my question is, which emerging trends in consulting do you currently observe, and how can women prepare for the future and ensure that future generation faces fewer barriers and challenges such as we discussed today?
I mean, when you asked that question, the first thing that popped into my mind was AI. But I don't know if this is really
in this community,
right? So, but it's interesting, and I don't think there is ever a conversation like about future of work without AI somehow making its way into the mix. But I was just thinking about how to stay ahead and stay on top of that. It's essentially trying on a day-to-day basis to use AI for small things. If you have to summarize a report, if you have to, I don't know, you're very technical, you're trying to explain a very technical thing to a non-techie, just stick it in AI and see what happens. It's like just practicing again. It's about practicing the muscle. But in terms of from a female women in consulting perspective, there is a bigger drive to kind of improve that diversity aspect in consulting, just because, as we were just saying earlier, clients are getting bigger, more complex, more diverse. So you need that diversity of aspects and angles to look at a different problem in order to be more effective. So I think there is a lot of focus now on kind of making sure that recruitment process is fair. Even when I'm recruiting for Deloitte, like I don't see faces on CVs anymore. I don't see, all of this kind of potential bias is starting to get actively, addressed, just so that we kind of look at people on a face value, or so that's probably not the right word, but we try and get the talent in regardless of gender or race or anywhere else. So I think there's a whole big drive in the industry as a whole to kind of capture talent across the board, which definitely will help from kind of women in industry perspective. Also, I think there's been a lot, at least at Deloitte, there's been a lot in terms of communication around, how do you catch yourself in moments where, I used to go in interviews and say, oh yeah, so where you're from? It's like, that's like that's what you would do in like a bar over a glass of wine, but not in like not like a recruitment conversation. So some of these I think waves of awareness that have been started and are continuing across the industry are quite positive, I think.
Yeah, I mean, Stan, I'd echo what you've said there in terms of kind of having that kind of diversity, inclusion, and all of that focus, which is really key. I think part of, from my perspective as well, it's also using communities like this to kind of expand that network, to support each other. I think there's a lot about kind of if we bring more of that perspective at the top, there's more of us to kind of have that shared view and kind of challenge if there's any other different perspectives as well. And I think there's something about kind of ensuring that all generations kind of do need to be supported and come up together. So having and making use of kind of the mentorship that's around there, the networking, the community building, kind of really helps kind of challenge that. And I think that way is how we kind of in future face lesser barriers, because we've kind of brought up a community that's around there and that can help when they kind of reach those at the different levels.
And from a personal perspective as well. So when I meet someone else who is kind of a working mom or is trying to kind of juggle around family, work responsibilities, and so on, you sort of discover little things that help you along the way for, I don't know, scheduling pickups, drop-offs, and things like that I, as a first-time mom, did not have a clue. I had to just figure it out. But then after speaking with other families, other parents in the team or outside of work as well, you sort of start trying things out and kind of removing some of that pressure on kind of being a mom in the workforce, just by, again, as Shona was saying, just reaching out to communities around you, reaching out to people and taking a different perspective sometimes, or just trying things out.
And I guess not so much an emerging trend, or I guess something we're facing at the moment, but I look back, pre-2020, when we were working in a world that was 100% in person. Even culturally, I think a lot of the firms were very different to what they are now. Just looking back at that and to, think that we kind of went through ways of working, working 5 days a week in the office, sometimes 6, to now having more flexibility to, getting to work from home and spend the time and take that as and when we need is also amazing. I know for me personally, I'm from Australia, so getting to go back home and be able to work from, back in Australia is just something amazing. And I don't think anything that could have really been imagined sort of 6 years ago. So I think just how far we've come is actually quite incredible as well for women, but also men. Within kind of consulting and what was traditionally quite a heavy hitting industry. I think we've really come far from what it was.
No, absolutely. Thank you so much. So indeed, there's different type of trends, right, emerging. So from some of the technology innovation perspective to some sort of life related trends, right? So I think, like you said, when it comes to something like AI, it's just a matter of, not working against it, but find a way how to work with it and determine how it actually can help you to become a, let's say, better professional or better consultant, right? So I think that's sort of like the mindset that I at least try to keep, when there is some sort of new innovations. And, when it comes to some sort of life or personal type of trends, such as people being more open with childcare, right? Or people being more open about mental health and all the other things. It's just, I think, it's worth remembering that there are other people who most probably experience the same. So I think it's just kind of, being open, sharing some of the challenges that you may have, and then others will literally chip in and help you and advise you and support you accordingly. And again, it can be quite vulnerable space, but again, from my experience, I find it quite empowering. And if anything, people value, going back to Monica's point, that being authentic, right? So that sort of goes back to that point. So I think it's quite important when we sort of look after each other and lift each other as a community or as women. So I guess that's sort of my final thought on this section. And yes, and I just wanted to say a massive thank you to our panel. So we covered quite a bit today. We discussed a lot of different things, from how to break into consulting, how to thrive, and how to sort of think about the future. And I'm extremely proud of us because we managed to finish just on time, which is incredible. And Madura is pinging me saying that we have quite a bit of questions.
Yes, we do have questions
from our audience, which is amazing. So with that, I'm going to move on to our another exciting part of today, which is Q&A. So
yeah,
Madura, word to you.
yeah. So we have one question from Shahnaz. I think you all have touched upon it. I'll just read it, but she has a follow-up question as well. So how easy it is for people who do not have working experience to enter the field, especially if they are coming, for example, from scientific and technical background. I think we have spoken about this and you all have addressed it, but I'll read her follow-up question. Someone who doesn't have experience but has interest is hard to show on CV. I'm being told taking courses helps. What do you suggest?
I think if you're coming in from kind of more scientific background, so there could be different pathways to get, especially into the bigger firms, the different pathways, like a scholar pathway. I think there used to be different ways of kind of applying into the firm via a more structured route, like almost like a graduate program, where you kind of switch fields from one to the other. The other point around courses, I mean, it really depends on which part of the firm you would like to go into. So if it's more of the kind of technology transformation side of things, you could do like a specific targeted course around that. Or if you kind of want to go into more of the financials and analysis kind of thing, you could definitely, there's so many professional qualification type courses that you could do. Some of like heavy hitting CIMA, ACA type of accounting things that you could do, or even something kind of more certificate based. So I find first figure out where your kind of interest lies within the firm, then maybe reach out to somebody who already works there. And as I'm going to go back to my LinkedIn bingo and just kind of see who is connected to like somebody who works in a consulting in that sort of industry, and have a chat, see what they think, because like having a bit of insider knowledge never hurts. On orienting like the way in so from a more non-traditional route, let's call it.
Yeah, I think so. I'd also add to that to say, look for the opportunities where you are currently as well. So don't underestimate the role that you're in and kind of the work that you're doing, and actually what's also happening probably outside of your team or in another team that you might be able to start speaking to people about. It doesn't necessarily have to be you go into another leave the firm that you're in, or leave the job that you're in. You can try and seek out these opportunities, because what I found is there's always some kind of activity going on, and some people have kind of been seconded to different parts of the business and have learned a different skill set, and that also is a route. If you're trying to build your proficiency in an area, you can say, well, I've worked in this role and I've led a project in my business that does this. People have also found out routes into M&A that way. I was doing an interview a couple of weeks ago where someone actually discovered their love of M&A because their business just happened to be acquiring someone, and then she was kind of part of that, and then she really, really took that on board, and that's where she discovered her passion. So also your current business might have things going on that allow you to kind of move sideways and kind of demonstrate that skill, come back, and then be able to apply for the firms as well.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I hope, Shahnaz, it answers your question. All right, thank you. Moving on to the next one is from Emily. Do you have any advice for entering or working in consulting part-time, such as if you are attending graduate school part-time or taking care of aging parents or children? Basically, is consulting part-time possible?
I'm happy to take this one. I think it's important to have that option, especially if you want to be a mother or you take care of someone at home. I think it's important to have that at least as an option. And my previous boss actually in consulting was a mother of two children, and she worked part-time. So she worked 4 days a week, and that just allowed her that extra day to be at home, take care of the kids, do all the home stuff that she needs to get to, but then have the job as well. And I think that that's so critical and important. And I think it's more so a thing now after COVID, which I think is great that COVID allowed that to happen. But yeah, I think if you're younger, so if you're graduate level, there are a lot of options. I think for a lot of consulting houses, they have like part-time graduate programs, or at Deloitte, we have what they call an industry placement, I think. So you are still studying, and then you do a year at Deloitte in the middle of your degree or something like that. Then you go back, get your degree, come back to Deloitte, if that makes sense. And that really, really helps you to get that real world experience that a lot of other students don't have, you know. So I think in terms of the company itself, I'm sure a lot of companies have these options. And yeah, it's definitely a possibility to work part-time.
I think that's good to know, because when you say consulting, the first thing that comes to your mind is fast-paced, full-time, with long hours, that's all. And then, you know, you sort of wonder, is it even possible at that point to have something part-time? So thank you so much.
I think it's important that we kind of change the narrative around that, especially if we're trying to get more women into this industry. There's a very clear reason, in my opinion, why we don't have a lot of us here, right? It's because it's not sustainable always if you do have kids or something like that. So we really need to change how it works, and we need to make it easier for people who have people at home who they need to care for, or hobbies that are very time consuming, or children, etc., that we make it easier to join this industry. Because if we don't, the problem of us only having men in a room, that's not go away, in my opinion. So it is really intense, this industry, but I think that in the last 3 years it's gotten like better. And I'm really happy that that's happened, because I think that that is truly what allows more people with unique home lives to join consulting, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
my 2 cents on that.
No, absolutely. And that's really good to
feel
know.
the passion in your answer. I love it.
Yeah, absolutely brilliant. Thank you so much. Next question is from Ira. She asks, could you share some more details on how you have climbed the corporate ladder to your current leadership roles? I hear a lot about playing corporate game and how that directly ties to getting promotions and advancing. Do you have any advice or thoughts on this?
It's very interesting, climbing the corporate ladder. It sounds like I don't know if you've seen the film, the series Succession, but it definitely sounds like that. I think it is quite structured and unexcitingly, as I could say. So typically, as with any corporation, there is expectations for the role, there is expectations for the kind of industry you work in, and so on. So it is a very classic, it's a very classic approach to kind of going through, getting the experience, getting the feedback, not just internal feedback, but also client feedback is important. Covering all the requirements for the role. So unfortunately, there's nothing magical, or somebody gets in a room and then we have a beauty pageant or something like that. It is quite standard and classical promotion process. I think there is maybe at very senior levels, things become, obviously consulting is a business that generates revenue, so things start becoming more focused towards business development. So your business development skills kind of become more and more important as you kind of go through the kind of director partner level, which is literally the top leadership of the firm. It's also a partnership. So this means you literally buy into the business, which therefore means you need to be really invested into growing the business and finding your clients, working with your clients, and so on. So I think that's the more non-traditional angle to any other industries, where you kind of actually need to go out and find work and kind of do the business development, not be shy to kind of go in the room and talk about how your team can help solve a problem, what your product and how your product is different to somebody else's product, and so on and so forth. So I think maybe that's the one aspect that is more unique. But as with any organization, like getting your feedback, doing what the best you can in the role is 100% worth it.
Right. I think listening to all this, like what the questions are and what you are been saying, I think we need more talk about consulting.
Real talk.
And get these, get misconceptions out and,
Demystifying consulting, probably.
Yes,
That could be a session in its own.
Exactly. It seems like that because there is this perception, right? There is some sort of stereotyping, and I think that's what is causing these questions. Let me go on to the next one, which is from Steph. What are your thoughts on impact, positive or negative, on the emerging AI technologies or tools on this type of role or industry? How do you keep up with it and use it to excel in your position?
I think that's a very good question.
I knew
it's
it
very
would come
topical.
up.
It will come up. No, it's really interesting. I mean, the whole with any kind of emerging technology, an industry has to change. It has to adapt. It has to kind of react to it. And one of the things that I think that consulting in general, I don't know we're doing this as a firm, but we're quite good at is kind of really embracing that, because ultimately you can kind of ignore it and then not think about it, and then it hits you. Whereas I think in firms like ours, like it is at the forefront. We're doing a lot around, we've got our own kind of AI platform that we're able to kind of utilize, and there's ways, and there's a lot of training around kind of how do you also get the most out of the platform, because there's so much just putting like a question in or putting something in, but actually to be able to get the right data back, you've got to be quite specific, and you've got to be quite targeted. So there is a lot of investment in terms of being able to kind of upskill people in that. I think ultimately, in some cases with everything, it'll probably make things easier. In some cases, it will generate new opportunities. So it's as kind of our clients react to kind of how they're going to adapt as well. That's going to be actually quite key, and a lot of opportunities as well. So I think there's definitely positives to be seen from it that will really help kind of how the consulting industry actually starts to shape around it and utilize it to its benefit.
Thank you so much. I think overall everywhere there is an impact, right? It's not just consulting, and we just have to wait and watch how it evolves. Sorry, anybody wants to add something?
I was just going to add, in terms of practical terms, into practical activities, I consider myself as a very much an AI novice, and trying to use AI at least once a day, even if it's just recently I was redecorating at home and trying to figure out what kind of paint goes in a whatever east-facing bedroom. Like, okay, you could spend hours on Google, or you could just try an AI tool. So it's just really like practicing that muscle, either summarizing your notes from a client call into something that makes more sense, and then plugging the actions into a plan and so on. So this is just making it more of a day-to-day kind of thing, at least from my personal experience, to make it less of a, oh, this is a new thing that we should all be like getting on the board with. Like making it more almost like, instead of Googling things, you ChatGPTing things. Just to start with, and then you build slowly.
That makes sense. Thank you. Moving on, we have lots of questions, so that's why I'm a little moving on to the next one. From Rajni. If someone needs to get into consulting, where do they start? What can or should be doing so they ensure they land this role?
This is a great question, because I feel like it can be quite overwhelming in terms of where to start to get into the industry. I would say, firstly, start with your internal network. So use LinkedIn, use the people you know, and if you know anyone that does work at a consulting firm, chat with them and speak to them about how they got into the industry, or if there's any ins at any of their firms. I think using that network is really powerful. Probably second, if there are any specific companies or areas that you're interested in, using LinkedIn as well. I love LinkedIn, clearly. Using LinkedIn to search for those specific companies or roles that might be available. It's actually pretty cool to see, to have something, I guess, like LinkedIn, where you can just search for the role and the company, and then, a whole heap comes up around the world. I think that's another really good tool. And then I guess just the general internet as well. There's obviously so many job pages and things like that to take advantage of. So using Google and maybe even ChatGPT, as Stan says, to find these opportunities. That's probably the other way. I guess from a CV perspective, there's always skills that you probably have in, whether it's you're at university or whether you're in your current in the workplace. There's plenty of skills that you can spin that you'll use in consulting. So I think making your CV kind of relevant for what you'd be doing in consulting, whether it's researching that role and then adapting it to either that role description or what you're trying to get into, that's also very useful.
There's usually a case study involved, like going into consulting, whether it's an experienced role or whether it's a junior grade role. There's a case study involved. So if you're going in kind of into the industry straight from nothing, my advice is to kind of try and look at some case studies. Usually on websites in like HR or career site, you kind of get the feel of what a case study would look like. There's billions of this stuff on YouTube, to be honest, like people solving consulting cases on YouTube. I find like do a bit of practice on that. And then there's a very classic case in point book called Case in Point, which is essentially your MBB, so McKinsey, Bain, and BCG type consulting interviews. So just to get your brain into a bit of a case study type mindset. And then the other thing around, of course, what Monica was saying around the CV, try to kind of showcase those, it doesn't have to be a specific job that you've done that is consulting job, but the skill set. Try to pull out the skill set, the being organized, the having those, managing stakeholders, the explaining complex issues to people who don't understand them. So these pulling out the skills of your kind of current, whether it's university or another job and so on, is the trick to kind of make the CV stand out and adapting it to the role. And also there's very niche consultancies, right? So you can be a consultant for a chemicals business. Like, so they're very small firms that only advise on a certain type of chemical producers or something like that. So again, I love a ChatGPT nowadays, but if you want to start with mapping out, what those maybe niche consultancies that take you from an industry role to a consulting slant onto the industry, and then to a kind of wider consultancy role outside of that industry might be another way of looking at things.
Thanks for that. And at this moment, I think I would take this opportunity to say that, women coding community runs CV clinics, and, we have mock interviews. So, please do join the community. And so anyway, that's my promotional talk. But let me go on to the next question, which is from Rachel. As a consultant, how do you get assigned a project? Are you eventually in a place where you can choose the project you work on and the clients you work with?
That's a good question.
I think the short answer is it depends. It's a very consulting answer, I'm sorry. But so consulting goes up and down with the economic cycle. So the amount of projects that are on the table to choose from can go from, too many to just a few, right? So it will depend on how the business is doing in any particular point in time. There's also quite a structure internally that kind of allocates talent based on, years of experience, based on skill set, based on industry experience, based on the kind of project that you're going on to. So the point of the firm is to make sure that the right person is there for the client to do the right job. So ultimately, if you would love to do a project that is some very, 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 very far away from your skill set, it will be really difficult to get on that project. So if I'm in M&A and I'm someone and I really would love to do an AI project, I would struggle, right? Unless there is like some sort of M&A angle that I could try and like dip my toe into and at least get close to a project. Yeah. And so on. So, but that doesn't mean it's not impossible. So you could like raise your hand, make sure that if there is unavailability, maybe you won't be working all the time on one thing, or maybe you'll go in there for a week to just try and dip your toe in this kind of project or in this kind of industry. There's always flexibility if you talk with your resourcing manager and then they say, okay, I want to try out this industry now, especially in the early phases of your career. So before, when you're the graduate, when you're the assistant manager, when, even at manager level, and if it gets a little bit tricky above manager at assistant director level and up, but especially in the early stages in your career, shifting from team to team is a lot easier. Shifting from industry to industry is a lot easier. Going from one type of project to another is easier, just because the expectation is that you are still learning and you need to kind of get that rounded experience to eventually land into something that is you're passionate about, is your thing, you're super good at. And, you walk into the client room, you sort of have the answers already. It's a good feeling, hey, don't get me wrong, but always, of course, get the point that you want to try out different things. So I think it's a multi-factor thing, but it's not a free choice, is all I'm saying. It depends on many factors, but it also not a closed door.
Yeah, I think I'd just add to that, Stan, to say that I think you can navigate your way around it as well. I think it's all about kind of explaining what's the value that you bring to the project. So ultimately, when you've got a number to choose from, it's like, well, where does your kind of skill set lie? How do you articulate what you'll bring to the project? And that always has quite a profound impact on whether you're kind of scheduled on something or not as well. And I think that's the way to kind of look at it is, well, it might be a preference one way or another, but actually if you take a step back and go, well, what can I do for this project that will actually mean that I am the right person for it, not just in terms of kind of the wider aspects of something that you're interested in, but what can I do to kind of navigate my way around that will be really helpful as well, and will kind of help with some of that scheduling on projects.
Right. Thank you. I hope that, Rachel, your question is answered. There's one more last question. We have probably briefly touched upon it, but in case you have to add something more, Alicia asks, many consulting companies ask for many years of experience in consulting in job postings, except at very junior level. What would you recommend a professional with few years of experience, but no experience in consulting to do to break into consulting? Any courses? How about MBAs? I think we spoke about courses, but what's your thought on MBA?
The first thing actually that popped into my mind is a very female inclination to always strive to tick all the boxes before hitting apply. Don't do that. You don't have to tick all the boxes. I find this in myself and always have to remind myself that, 60% is fine. Just try it out. And it's tough out there in terms of competition for jobs, but also in terms of competition for talent. So go to the CV clinic, make sure the CV is right for the job, and don't wait for the 100% of the ticks to be ticked, right, to apply. I think in terms of MBAs, it's a way in, but I think for going into MBA program opens the door to going into these kind of graduate routes into the consulting firms. And they're not graduates, so for MBAs, it's a kind of a different program. But having a fresh diploma opens that door for you. Obviously, that's a good thing. Is it worth the investment? It's a very personal choice. So I think it needs to balance out what every person kind of finds it works for them. I would advise to just try first. Don't wait for all the boxes to be ticked. Try first, do the best you can with your CV, go to the interview, put those skills up front, even without the MBA, and give it a go. I think the MBA is super useful, especially if you're doing a career shift, like a very huge career shift. That kind of MBA puts like a little pivot from something to something totally, completely and utterly different. But I feel consulting has, there's so many skills that people use in day-to-day life that are transferable into consulting that, if I were to go into engineering per se, I would have to do an engineering degree to get into engineering. The other way around, I don't think it requires like a huge, massive investment.
Yeah. I think also just in terms of kind of the experience-based question and the number of years, I think there's also something about trying to match your skill set to that, or seeing how your skill set, what you've done in the past, could be applied in a different way. So even though they ask for X years of consulting, I think we'll think about all the skills the consulting skills that are there, how you've then applied them in a different context, which might not be in a consulting firm, and then use that as a way of saying, well, it's not in a consulting firm that your experience is, but actually here's all the skills that you've demonstrated, and kind of convey that is actually another powerful way to kind of get that entry route in, where you don't have to go, well, it's just the number of years, and that probably doesn't mean much. It's kind of where have you demonstrated the skills, which is what really matters.
Yeah, absolutely. I think both of you have touched upon the same very important point, that we always think everything, all check boxes have to be ticked, we have to be super skilled, everything we should know even to begin applying. And I think that's something which is, I think even I struggle with at times. It's just that, everything has to be 110%.
I'm a total culprit of that, for sure. Yeah. But you have to check yourself and just be brave, plunge in, see what happens.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. It was so nice to talk to you all. Back to you, Julia.
No, I mean, I'm just going to echo you, Madhura, and just say a massive, massive thank you to our panel for finding time, dedicating, opening up and sharing your experience. And I mean, I'm going to use this consulting phrase, but I think we really over-delivered today. So thank you. Yes, so definitely thank you so much. I feel like, I learned even more today. And I think the bottom line is, it's all transferable skills. And even what we discussed today in the context of consulting, it applies to all the other jobs in all the other industries, because we pretty much always act as a trusted advisor to whatever type of job we're doing, right? So I think everyone can get inspiration from today's discussion.